Welcome to this virtual field trip on Caribbean economy and slavery. This virtual tour focuses on plantation economy on the island of Barbados. Today we will look at a general layout of the Caribbean plantation. Then we would move along to a historical tour of one of the oldest plantation houses in Barbados. Some of you may be wondering, what is a plantation? A plantation is an agricultural estate mainly centered on a plantation house or a great house. In the Caribbean region, enslaved Africans were forced to work the lands on the plantations. The plantation was organized strategically to ensure productivity. It functioned as a farm and a factory as crop production was critical to the plantation. The parts of a plantation were the cane fields or the fields, and this area was an area of crop planting and harvesting. The plantation was divided into 3 to 5 fields and subdivided into plots. The fields were laid out in rows or grids with a pathway for carts. Then we have the mill, the area where the sugarcane was crushed and juiced. There were 3 types of mills in the Caribbean. The water mill, which was mainly found in Grenada, Jamaica, Windward Islands, and Cuba. Windmills, this was the main type of mill used in Barbados. Animal mills, the most common in the Caribbean. Located next to the mill was the boiling and curing houses. These buildings were constructed from roughly cut stones to withstand heat and regular use. The furnaces were located here and the cane juice was boiled to produce sugar crystals. Located next to the boiling and curing houses were the distillery or still house, and this was the area where the molasses was taken and rum was also produced there. The enslaved Africans lived on the plantations in areas called barracks, or slave quarters. They were crammed into small, cramped places in these lengthy, poorly built cabin-like structures. In order to make work convenient to reach and to boost plantation productivity, the barracks were placed next to the mills or the field. Each plantation had spaces allocated for the enslaved Africans to grow ground provisions. They were allowed to work in their allotted spaces in their free time, especially on Sundays. Each plantation had a woodland area which provided fuel for the great house as well as the mills, curing house, and distillery. Pasture land for the animals which were used to drive the mills or as a food source, and large tracts of sugarcane fields. Now we will look at one of the main places on the plantation, the Great House or Plantation House. More specifically, the Sunbury Plantation House. The island of Barbados housed over 600 plantations during the Sugar Revolution in the 17th century. One of the oldest plantations on the island, the Sunbury Plantation, located in St. Philip, was built in the 1660s and its land spanned approximately 400 acres. This occurred during the rise of the Sugar Revolution. The plantation house was built by artisan enslaved Africans. The first owner was Matthew Chapman. Chapman purchased lands from other farmers within the St. Philip area, thus causing the size of the plantation to increase. Under his ownership, the plantation was called Chapman. The second owner was Nathaniel Branca, and under his ownership from 1729 to 1763, the plantation was called Brancas. The third owners were James Butler Harris and his wife Elizabeth, and they owned the plantation in 1764. During their ownership, the Bell House was erected, and today it is still present. The fourth owners were the Barrow family, and they would have owned the plantation from 1775 to 1835. The plantation was called Brothers Plantation, but shortly after, it was named Sunbury Plantation. Under the ownership of the Barrow family, in 1780, the plantation house roof was destroyed by a great hurricane, leaving one child dead. Additionally, John Henry Barrow planted 300 mahogany trees on the plantation, and today half of those mahogany trees are still present. The fifth owner of the Sunbury plantation was Merchant Thomas Daniel. Daniel's niece married Scotsman Alistair Cameron, who acquired the plantation in 1896. Their three daughters lived there as spinsters until the last two died in 1980 and 81. In the early 1980s, the Sunbury house and its surrounding garden was sold to Keith and Angela Melville. In 1984, they turned the house into a historic site, museum, and an events site which is open to the public today. Sadly, tragedy struck in 1995. The house was allegedly set ablaze by the gardener, destroying the first and second floor of the great house. However, the basement, some furnitures, and collectibles were saved. Nonetheless, the house was beautifully restored and refurnished with a fine collection of antiques and Barbadian memorabilia. After the death of Mr. Melville in 2018, the Ince family bought the plantation, and it remains open to the public and is a popular site for weddings, banquets, and special events. The two-story historic building is maintained as a period museum today. The house consists of a living room area, which is the first room as you enter the great house. On the left of the living room, there is the planter's office, which included records of slaves, books, and payments to various plantation workers. To the right of the living room was the sunroom. This room was used to entertain guests, and the lady of the house was the main host of this event. Then we moved to the dining hall area, which was occasionally used for small dinner parties. Currently, the Sunbury plantation houses a 1788 26-seater mahogany dining table, which is the oldest on the island. This table originally belonged to the Pickering plantation in St. Lucie. The dining hall area was used to showcase the wealth and status of the planter. Now we move to the top floor. This floor consisted of the guest bedroom, then the bathroom, which included a tub and wooden urinals. The planter's bedroom, which was located next to the bathroom, was the largest room on the top floor. The lady of the house, or the planter's wife, also occupied that space. They had separate urinals. This room was the breeziest, and it gave the planter a clear view of the plantation and the garden. Next to the planter's room was the nanny's room. Her room was close to the children's room because she was responsible for taking care of them. Additional rooms in the house are the cellar, which houses various materials and equipment such as carriages, horseshoes, and a large collection of household appliances. The next room, the optical room, which was not originally a part of the house, but today it houses old cameras and glasses as well as typewriters that were collected by the Melvilles. The Sunbury Plantation House stands as a historic site that allows Barbadian and visitors to engage in Barbadian and plantation history. Thank you for joining me on this virtual tour, and I hope you had a wonderful experience. Please remember to complete the worksheet at the end of the session. You can hand it in before the end of the week. Thank you.